Good afternoon. I'm here with Joseph Pinto, President of the State Council from 2016 to 2017. When you joined the State Council, were you a staff member or management or a student?
So I was a staff member going back to when I first graduated school. And to be quite honest with you, I mean, I really was not very involved with the organization, but had just joined to be a member. Someone had said, "Hey, you should join this," so that's what I ended up doing.
So who did you meet that made you want to advance in the organization?
So I was at Bronx, Lebanon, and probably sometime early 2000s, I guess, and had a conversation with Layla Tibby and Mike Blumenfeld, and Mike had encouraged Layla to invite me to the New York City um, Society board meeting, and so she did, and that was probably 2000. I guess 6, 7, so in that area. I don't remember the exact timing of it. Um, and I got involved with the city society and got on their board. And then from there, just sort of progressed.
How many of the previous past presidents did you get to meet or know, and what were they like?
Well, so obviously a number of the past presidents. Are you speaking more during my term or just in general?
No, in general. So, like I got to know Seymour Katz,
Hmm.
um, Bernie Mill,
Yeah,
Kurt Kleinman. Those
yeah,
those are the people that kind of got me involved.
yeah. So honestly, unfortunately, I haven't spoken with Mike in a while, but definitely Mike Blumenfeld, um, who I actually did consider as a mentor at one time earlier on, because Mike really did get me involved. Like I said, along with Layla, um, and then getting more involved with the state. Obviously, yourself. I believe we co-chaired the annual assembly committee at one time. Um, Bruce, Vicky. Marcia Gutfeld, a host of John Manzo, a host of past presidents and just active members or board members for the state council, and Karen Vita Colonna. Eh, and really, I mean, we may get to this question down the road at some point, but I'm not sure. I really didn't read through it, but I will say the connections and knowing those individuals like Frank Cisnowski and whatnot really helped me, I'll say, navigate through my career and finding different opportunities um, within health system. Barry Goldstein was a big influence for me early on in my career. So definitely meeting those individuals really helped me move and progress throughout my career.
Excellent, excellent. What challenges did you see as a member, board member, and president of the organization?
I would say I think our biggest challenge even today is the vastness of the state. We seem to be There seems to be a divide between, even when you hear, some conversation between upstate, downstate. And I think getting continuity and the word I'm looking for, cohesiveness amongst the upstate, downstate, I'll say teams or chapters becomes has become was a challenge, and I think still is a challenge. Just in hearing and speaking with past board members and even a couple current board members, there seems to be a divide there. Unfortunately, I think we need to somehow figure that out. Uh, I would have thought with the advancement and progression of things like this Zoom or team meetings where we can meet and speak with colleagues from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. We'd be able to utilize the Zooms and team meetings and technology to sort of help break down that divide, but I don't think it's happened yet. I would say that's probably our biggest challenge.
All right. That was actually my next question, which was seeing the council grow through the years. We've met those challenges, and I gather from your statements that maybe we still need some work to do.
Yeah.
Membership has always seemed to be an issue. You remember what members wanted during your presidency?
It seems like the common theme is, it's always the CE credits, right? How many CEs we can offer, how many educational programs we can offer. Um, I think that still holds true to some degree. I think we've changed more towards advocacy. I think that's an important piece. I will say during my presidency, we did have a number of advocacy agendas and that we really pushed forward, whether it be CDTM and the big one was the technician bill. And we faced a lot of challenges from our counterparts from, PISNey and the change um, with that movement. So I do think those are still the two big pieces, advocacy and education. For me, though, I'll be honest with you, I think, and when I have students and I speak to students or residents that are new, I don't think you can put a value on the networking and friendship that comes out of these organizations like the state council. Like I mentioned earlier, just forming those relationships with individuals really open up doors and you learn so much from others that you don't really recognize or understand. Like there's nothing like picking up the phone and calling one of our colleagues to say, hey, how were you handling this, right? Or sending someone an email. If you're not part of it or you're not in tune with it, it becomes much more difficult to be able to do that. So
Well, it kind of segues into the next question is, how often and where did the board meet? And was it very organized and professional, or was it more camaraderie?
yeah, so when I was president, we met all of our board meetings were up in Albany. I want to say we had 4 in Albany, and then we had the one live at the annual assembly. Um, the rest were phone calls. Um, they were the board in Albany. Those meetings were full day, and we did try to get the board up the night before so that we can go as a group to dinner. And again, I think that's more of it's both. It's professional, it's camaraderie, it's a mix of both, right? So yeah, that's how I remember our board meetings. And it's funny that you mentioned that because that's a lot of what I hear now. And some of it is partly due to COVID, where the board they're not meeting as often in person, right? There's a lot of Zoom and team board meetings, and not necessarily the face to face. And I think a few years they bounced it around a little, so it wasn't always in Albany. They might have gone to different chapters to hold their board meeting, which I think is a great idea. Because it gets the local chapters sort of involved and can participate. Uh, but yeah, when I was president, they were all up in Albany.
Okay. Um, was there any major mishaps or major issues when you were president, which would be useful for future presidents not to repeat?
Uh, I don't think there were really any mishaps that I can outwardly recall, to be quite honest with you. I, one of the things now, and I think it's important for us as past presidents, to really to still be involved, right? And to be resources for I'll say the newer generation coming up. But I think there's a time where we need to take maybe a step back and let individuals sort of come up and learn from us and be there as a resource, but not necessarily be a board member, right? Or have that influence. I think I think that's where we have to sort of draw the line and know how much influence or input we want to have, and how much we want to just be there as a resource and guide people up through the council. But that would be the only, if it's not really a mishap, but I think that's at some point we need to do that as past presidents and folks that have been part of this organization for a while.
Okay. Annual assemblies. When you became a member, what were the early annual assemblies like and where were they held?
So the first one I attended actually was at the Sagamore. Um, so I think I was up at the Sagamore a few times, and then primarily and then what was the other one? Turning Stone a few times, and then primarily now it's all been in Saratoga. Uh, it's definitely evolved. I will say one of the things I'll say I'm not sure if anyone's going to remember this, but I certainly do. That I'm proud to say was one of the initiatives I brought forward. I'm not sure if it was during my presidency or when I was the director for education and workforce. Uh, but I had participated at Help Connect Partners, which has the reverse uh, networking or exhibits, right, where the pharmacy directors are at a table and industry comes by. And that's what I introduced for the annual assembly at the time. I think that's, even to current day, that's one of the biggest sellers for us for the annual assembly. So I think that's one of the biggest things I've changed at the annual assembly is like before it was 2 days of exhibits with the industry. Now we've reduced that to one, but we do two reverse exhibits or networking. And I believe that's really been beneficial for us in attracting our industry colleagues to come and support.
Okay. What was it like when you were president? Was it busy and chaotic, or was it fairly sedate?
As president at the annual assembly, definitely busy. Uh, a little bit chaotic, because you are trying to be in different locations and meet as many people and speak with as many people as you can. You want to make anyone who's new there feel comfortable, and you want to make sure that we get to um, our supporters, our industry folks. And so I think it's busy, but it was definitely and a little chaotic, not too crazy. But yeah, I mean, and just prepping for your installation speech. I think that was probably the most nerve-wracking piece of it is terms of just preparing for that, leading up to it. And then when you're there and you're at the House of Delegates and you're due to, present or speak at the when you're inducted or installed. So yeah, but it was great.
Yeah. So this gets back to one of the things you said before. This is generational changes. When you started, did you feel you needed to work your way up to the presidency? New members have a very different philosophy of needing a more evenly divided time between work and play. And how do we help them to assume these roles in the state council? And will the new members be able to move the council forward? A lot of different
Yeah,
questions there.
yeah. So I do definitely feel I felt I need to work my way up. Um, and I do think so. I think it's a combination of where we are right now in terms of there's a, and I remember you telling me this years ago, is that early on in careers when students or residents graduate, they're there's no necessarily family obligations or whatever, so they're active and they participate. They come, in their, let's say, early 30s, right? Whatever, they get married, they have a couple kids, and they sort of fall off. And then as those children get older and they're more established, they get involved again. And I think we have that gap still where we don't have those 30 plus that are still there that would get on the board, that have some experience working, that have been on a local chapter board or committees. So I think we're jumping from someone who graduates or they're a resident, they get on a local chapter board, and then the next thing you know, we're we're raising them up to get on the state council board, and there's not enough experience there. So I think that's where we need to find that sweet spot. And that's why I was going back to earlier that as past presidents and board members and active participants, we need to be able to, I guess, create the succession plan, be there to guide, but not necessarily be overbearing and involved, right? And I think that's where we need to find our sweet spot. So it, I wish I had the answer, but I, listen, and some of the newer generation people are really smart and dedicated and really want to get, but I think there's still a lack of that experience coming onto the board. One of the things I brought up being on the nominations committee for years that I think we need to consider, and I think we did it this year. Perhaps, we can look at health system or hospital leaders, right? So if you're a director, an assistant director, a clinical director, whatever, you have experience in your work organization. I'm confident enough that they can translate that experience and leadership onto the council, even if they haven't been on a committee or involved in a local chapter. If I have a pharmacy director that's been practicing for 15 years and they're a director or assistant director, they should and probably do have those leadership qualities that can get onto the board, right, and help us. So it could fill that gap. And then like doing what you're doing now is creating that history. And then folks that have the experience that are on the board and our executive director, they can learn from, ask questions, right? And I think that's one way of filling that gap. And I think in the past, we were looking only for people that were on chapter boards or, or not on a committee. And so that really limited our pool of candidates in terms of nominations. So I think we expanded a little to include and get those directors, assistant, or whatever they may be, leadership in hospitals, get them more involved and get them on boards. I think that will help grow our influence in health system in a whole and also attract new members.
Okay. Okay, any final parting nuggets you wish to give to future members who wish to become president?
So I mean, I think I covered most of them in my answers. Like I said, for me, I think the probably the most important was the networking, the friendship, the everything that goes along with that. There were jobs that I ended up getting that would never have, I don't think, made possible if I didn't know individuals like yourself and Mike and Frank and Vicky and everyone else that came along with that. Just learning about the networking and advocacy and the education piece of it. I think I don't think you can't put a price on that. It's not something you're going to learn in school. It's something that we need to develop. And I think that's why, like I mentioned earlier, for us, I think that's what we should be doing now, helping, I want to say the younger generation, but the newer generation, and providing that guidance and helping and giving them direction for possible opportunities that they may not have known about if they weren't part of the council. Because I think that really is the value that we seek, right? So when we're on board meetings or committee calls, we always say, well, what's the value? Why is someone gonna join the organization? There's no bigger value to someone than being able to guide them and help them improve their career or give them a path to a position that they may not even known about, right? So at the hospital, we talk about pharmacy technicians and creating tech ladders and creating that career path. I think we have to look at it the same way for our members in terms of creating that career path by individuals that have been leaders in their organizations and in this organization to help guide them and give them opportunity.
Okay, I thank you so much for your time and speaking with you. With that, we'll end our discussion. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Ted.